Well, good. Well, I've been invited, Mr. Dowling, to come back to Renova here. I got to meet you last week and just talk a little bit with you about some of your memories of working in the mines locally and anything you're willing to share. I mean, we can start wherever. I certainly have some questions, but I don't want to dictate the conversation. I'm happy to go any direction you want. Why don't we start with some of the basics? You said your friends call you Bud. Is that your birth name?
Earl.
Earl.
That's my nickname since I was way high.
Okay. And Renova is where you grew up?
Except the first 10 years of my life, I grew up in Lycoming County, English Center.
English Center?
Yes. My dad was a coal miner. And he worked for English Center Coal Company in English Center. And English Center Coal Company moved from there to Bitumen. And my dad got a chance to come along with him. So we moved to Westport. Our family moved to Westport. My dad worked for English Area Coal Company in Bitumen. And I was only like 10 and a half years old. I went to a one-room school from where we lived in English Center for 5.5 years. And come to this area, and eventually my dad got to work for English Area Coal Company in another coal drift that had been semi-worked out. He was the only one working in here, and he would, after I was about 13, he started taking me out of school on his days. He picked to take me out of school, take him with him to help him in the mines. Well, he got in a lot of trouble over that, but still did it. And from that time on, I worked with my dad in coal mine. Eventually, my dad got a coal mine of his own, which was semi-worked out. And he and I worked in the mines. I was pretty young. And we had a coal truck when we delivered high school. After we worked in the mines all day, when we delivered high school, after we quit in the mines, we delivered high school by the ton in this area, the whole area.
When you say your father worked for the English Center Coal Company, when they relocated here, did they keep the same name or change the name?
Same name in Bitumen. English Center Coal Company in Bitumen.
Okay. But your father then eventually opened his own mine and went independent?
No, he opened it was already 3/4 worked out.
Okay.
And he was in there like more or less pulling pillars or things like that. Pulling pillars is after the mine's almost all worked out.
Yeah.
You start pulling pillars and working your way out. And then it's dangerous like it. It's dangerous in that as you come back.
May I ask what year you were born?
I was born in Williamsport,
When?
1931, October the 1st.
Okay. So you're coming up on your 90th birthday.
3 more months from today, I'll be 90 years.
All right. Can you help me understand clay mines, coal mines? There's a lot of overlap in the history books in the Renova area with clay mines and coal mines. Can you help me wrap my head around that a little better?
You mentioned the other day about coal mines and clay mines being side by side, which I can never remember. It could be before my time, but I don't remember.
Okay.
Whether it's clay mines, Drury's Run area, Somerset Mountain area, which is North Bend, Ponies Run area, and none. Ponies Run area didn't have any coal mines. Somerset Mountain had a little bit of coal mines, not too much. The clay mines and it was a brickyard in North Bend. And then you got the brick off of Somerset Mountain. There's a brickyard, 2 brickyards in Drury's Run. They got their clay out of Drury's Run, clay mines. But there's also coal mines in Drury's Run. But the history of myself is well, I worked hard from the time I was about 15 years old until I retired, really. But I know what work is all about. I started out young, and always done what my dad told me to do, asked me to do. He didn't tell me, he asked me. I got heck a lot of times from my dad for doing something wrong. And that's how you learn, you know.
Can you walk me through the mining technique that you mostly, in your era, which I believe you said was 1946, 47, 48, 49?
Mm-hmm.
Was it still drilling by hand?
Yes, it was.
And then what would you use for powder?
Hercules powder.
Hercules powder.
Yeah, but back in that time, you could get it in sticks that are about 9 inches long, and they're divided up into quarters. That was made that way, and inside of a sleeve.
Okay.
Okay, you could use a stick and a half or stick and a quarter, or whatever you determine after you drilled the hole. Then you put your needle in, and you run how much powder you want to do for that shot. Put that in, then you tamped it. But we tamped it with coal dust just off the floor. Tamping it till it was clear up to the end. And then when you pulled the needle out and left a little hole, a little smaller than your little finger, then what you use what you call a squib.
Squib.
A squib, you can light it. It would be momentarily, a few seconds, it go, then it go zoom back in the hole, set the charge off.
Okay.
And then you might have 3 or 4 holes like that simultaneously. Then you always had to go back. It was white smoke, terrible. It was terrible. You had to go back and see if you knocked any props out. If you knocked any props out, you had to reset the props. But tomorrow morning, if you didn't, it'd be kicked down. You had to set your props. And that was nothing uncommon. You had to do that.
When you would tamp, was it just like a wooden tamper, or did you use metal tampers?
Metal tamper with a copper end on it. It rode right on the needle.
Okay.
And, you could undercut your face. You talked about that, laying down undercutting.
Yeah.
It's like undercutting a tree to make a tree fall. And you shot in the top, and that brought the coal down. And the coal didn't come down in one big chunk. It came down when it blasted all apart, you know. But it wasn't just you going to start loading coal. Coal had seams of slate in it.
Yeah.
You had to separate the coal from the slate. The slate, you did that, and you threw the slate behind you in what they called the gob. And between your rails and the wall was a gob space where all your slate went to. Well, sometimes we had almost so much gob we had coal. So you had to handle all that stuff, and you had to pick all that coal off of the slate to throw the slate back. Then you had to load your own car. Where I worked with my dad in the coal mines, we were about as poor as you could get. We didn't have a pony. You loaded your coal car, you had to take your coal car outside yourself, push it outside to a tipple. And the tipple had a set of horns at the end. It was on a dump a car like that. But you had to get off that car. You could ride the car out. We had like a gravity run. You could ride the car out, but you get almost to the end of where you had to dump the car. You had to jump off the car, run around the front of the car, pull up a handle like that to release that door so the door could come open so the coal could come out. If it didn't, it all went in the tipple, coal car and all. But that happened one time. But, those were, and you're talking about 15, 16 years old, that's what it was. And, if you made a mistake, you got heck for it.
You made a comment to me, and I thought it was interesting. I was hoping you could explain. You said dynamite was too powerful or blasted up, and you said powder blast down, or how did you say that the other day?
Dynamite blast down.
Dynamite blast down.
Powder spreads out. They didn't use dynamite in the mines only in a case where you had to shoot the floor or shoot the roof in the rock. You didn't use it for coal.
Just too powerful? Would it have pulverized the coal? I mean, was that?
No. Coal would come out and it's what you call mine run coal, just as it came that shot come down, it's called mine run.
Okay.
And you had a choice to break it up smaller to handle it, to get it in the coal car, or you had a choice to, had it big enough so you can handle it, but well, on a shovel, you know. Then yeah, where I worked with my dad, we had on the temple, we had a sloping grate, different sizes, holes in the grate. We had to dump the car on the grate, get on the grate, and shovel the coal back and forth till it went down through the holes. You get different sizes of coal.
Sure.
All done by hand. So by the time you left inside the mines with a coal car and got back in the mines, it'd be about 20 minutes. So my dad would be working on a different part of the mines. Whenever we caught the switch to go out, or tap on the rail, he knew that not to come out, not trying to come in, you know. So I'd come back in, tap on the rail again. He'd do the same thing. That's how we had signals back and forth. We'd be spaced from different areas in the mines. But those things happen. You learn a lot. And then we had occasions where we had water in the mines. Well, as poor as we was, we had what we called a Hungarian pump. A galvanized water tub, horse tub, inside of a mine car, a bucket, a gallon of water in the tub, and you run the car out to the low spot, dump. That's Hungarian pump.
And that's all dead work. You're not getting paid for that.
No, that's dead work. Yeah, setting props is dead work. After you work ahead so far, it's too far to shovel, then you gotta lay more rail. You gotta lay ties and rails. You get closer to where you're working. That's dead work too. Everything outside of loading coal was dead work.
With the timbers, who paid for them? Were they provided? How did that work?
My dad bought his own timbers. You bought your timbers, you bought your ties, you bought your rails, everything it was on the owner, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. Then we would have to take in maybe 2 or 3 what you call props for the daily, before you shoot, you set props. Then that's in the coal car, you had to push in a grate all the way in. It's not an easy chore, but that was something you had to do all the time. That was just a daily chore. That's when in coming back out, that's all dead work too. It was just getting out, you're going to get paid for the coal.
Well, while you're talking about props, let's talk a little bit about the varying widths of the seams of coal. What were some of the lowest pinches it would go down to? What's some of the highest it would go up to?
5.5 feet per standard in the Bitumen area, and then 2-mile building rates per standard.
Okay.
Yes.
So it didn't squeeze down narrow and open back up at all, just kind of?
No, but you did have, as you go in the drift, you had to set timbers, because you go right in the mountain and it's nothing solid. So you have to set timbers up the sides, across the top, down the side, keep the sides from coming in till you get back in where the coal is solid. Then from there on, you call it a gangway. We call it a heading.
Okay.
It's about 12 feet wide. That's a heading. You work back in so far, and then you break off rooms. Maybe about 8 feet wide, rooms to the right, rooms to the left. You work that way, work that way. And the heading person keeps working ahead. And you had to have room for a pony to go beside the car. Because in our case, we didn't have a pony, but I worked where we did have ponies. Where you had ponies, you'd bring a string of cars in. You had like 10 men working, bring a string of cars in, and set up cars. First, you had to bring the load out. Go past where they are, set to bring the load out, park it, and give that person an empty. They had to come pick that up by themselves. You get all the miners in there working, get all the loaded cars. That when the pony had to walk by the cars, you know, had to have the height. The pony had a lamp on his head. He didn't have to have it. He knew where he was going, what he was doing. But
and were they carbide in your era?
carbide. Talking about carbide, we kept our carbide for our lamps right inside the drift mouth. We first started in, it's called drift mouth. 25 pound can. I lay on my head, I unscrew the lid, boom. That's when my dad got in trouble. Because I got fresh hand off me.
So the acetylene gas must have built up. Was there some moisture that got in the can or something?
Yeah, it was damp. It was gas. And then I went to school, and then they got in trouble. Took me out of school in the first place. And that happened. That was the only thing that seriously happened. Except I did tell you the story of from the time I went out of the mines till I come back in where I was working, the place had caved down. Right where I was working, I lost all my tools, my coat, maybe a sweatshirt, because it's warm, it's 52 degrees in there. You start sweating when you start working. You know, your clothes. I lost clothes, all my tools. We never cleaned it up. It was too much to clean up. So
just buried.
Yeah. But in that 20-minute period, and another thing is it's a known fact. A cave never happens during the day. It always happens overnight. You never knew why that did that. But if it's going to cave, it's going to cave overnight.
And you found that to be true?
That's true in most cases, but except just one. It's the only one I ever knew it come down during the day. I mean, you might have a chunk fall from the roof down. You might have a chunk not big enough to injure a person, maybe kill a person, but you never had a cave to kill somebody underneath it, you know. Not in daytime.
Looking back on that situation, do you think it was just that it wasn't timbered in time, or it would have fallen no matter what?
Well, it was probably within 3 or 4 hours of being timbered for the evening before you shoot. See,
Okay.
you're ahead, and you got a space between your face and the timbers. You got to bring them timbers up to you, close to where you're going to be working before you make the next shot. You need that space there. It could have been, but we never speculated that was the case. It could have been.
When you would set timbers, would you go tight to the ceiling, or would you put a wooden cap piece up first?
2 of them.
2 cap pieces.
Yeah, 2 wedges. One, you know, because you always have a variance of height, you know, a couple inches from the top. Each floor to the ceiling, you have a little bit of space to take up.
So you'd bring the timber up like that, and then you'd have a wooden wedge and a wooden wedge, and hammer it tight.
Yeah, hammer it tight.
The bottom of your timbers, did you put them tapered to a point, or were they flat bottom?
Flat.
Okay.
But we didn't have, when I worked with my dad, we didn't have no exhaust fan to put fresh air in, to keep it circulating. We didn't have that. It was too poor. But you didn't have the laws back then that you got today. You couldn't do that today. You couldn't begin to do that today.
Well, regarding air quality, you had mentioned to me that you really didn't have a lot of problems with gas in your mines.
Never.
But the dust, I guess, is a concern. So when you're talking about fresh air, was it more trying to ventilate the dust, or just to prevent for methane, or?
No, not fresh air.
So did you call it black damp, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, or what did you call it?
We didn't have that.
Okay.
In this area, I don't think so. Not so much. Methane, no. As far as having a lamp to check for methane, I don't ever remember any mines in the area that had a lamp that did that.
Okay.
You always had a huge exhaust fan run by like we call a one-liner engine. You know, put. They run all day long. They run that fan. If you worked in the mines that had 10 or 12 men working, you had to have a fan, and you had a second way out. The fan was located in the emergency way out. So you circulate air all the time. And as you went ahead with the heading, in your cross rooms, you close up behind you and open it between this room or this room, open up opening in the coal so the air would go for furnace can, you know. Keep everybody had air. In a mines with 10 or 12 men. No, I worked with my dad. No, we didn't have that. Probably, I don't know how I lived to be this long. You know, the conditions we went through, but I didn't know any better. That was a common way of life back then, you know. Just the way it was.
And have you had any problems with your lungs in your life, or
Never.
pretty healthy?
Never.
Wow.
Never. Nope. Nope. Just, I liked what I was doing, but the bad part about it, you come like middle of April, May, June, July, coal sales are down. You're more or less laid off. You're out of work. And right back at that point, we didn't have unemployment. And you sold the coal for cheaper. You dared to sell it and make any money at all to anybody who would buy it, you know. People in the summertime would fill up their cellars with coal because they get it more cheap.
Sure.
We did that in order to keep some money coming in, you know.
So in the 1940s, like what would a ton of coal sell for?
It sold for $4 at the mines. It sold for $7.50 house delivery per ton. More than 1 ton, you get it for $7. You can hold truckload, 5-ton truckload of coal for $35.
Okay, but if you're actually the miner producing it at the mine,
You sold it at the temple for $4 for other truckers. You had truckers out of Waynesboro. That was regular customers.
okay.
They'd be there every day.
Pardon me, I have a favor. It's raining and my windows are down. The keys are in the front. If they're not they're either in the cup holder, it's a CRV. I parked in the shade with the windows down because my guitar's in the back seat. Little help. Sorry about that. And then how much, tonnage-wise, on a good day, what could one man get out in a day? A good day, no dead work, just mine and just production.
Did work every day.
Okay, so that's going to slow you down.
Did work every day. If you get 5 cars of coal, which is a ton each per person a day, you're pretty fortunate because you had so much other stuff you had to do. It didn't make any money. You had to do that at the end of the day. Then besides that, I told you earlier about you load up a truck 5 ton of coal and bring it down to Renovo and deliver it 3 different places. That happened. In wintertime, we didn't work. We worked 7 days a week, wintertime, with no days off. Because the demand for coal, house coal, was great. And you worked when you could to make the money, you know.
Would you say at that time in the 40s was almost all the coal being sold for home heating and cooking? Is that what it was going for, or was there any other demand for it?
There was truckers out of Waynesboro. The English Era Coal Company in Bitumen itself had a contract with the glue factory in Newbury, this side of Waynesboro. Used to be there, not anymore. And they had their own truckers. And they hauled their what they produced. They hauled to the glue factory.
Okay.
And that was by one man contractor had about 5 trucks, dump trucks. Hauled the glue factory. They didn't sell house coal. They had their own business. Then there was a Desmond Brothers Coal Company. They sold coal to the tannery in North Bend. They sold like 15 ton a day to the tannery in North Bend. They delivered that coal themselves to the tannery. But they also had house coal deliveries. And back in those days, as it is today, yeah. If you did a lot of coal trucking coal to families, get it on credit. But you had to make sure you're here at their house on payday night. You get paid. If you didn't get there payday night, you probably weren't going to get paid that 2 weeks. That was common. But, And I had people write me letters, and beg you to bring, you owe you money, beg you to bring more coal. But you're just, you're giving away what you earn, giving away the profit. And it's not worth it. So you had to write them off, you know. So that happened.
In the larger mines, so not just the small mines like when you were working with your dad, but the larger mines, you had a bunch of men working. How would you know whose buggy is whose? How would you keep track of whose coal is whose?
They had a brass tag with the number on it, corresponding with your name. And they had, like on the car, had a bent nail, more or less. The tag had a hole in it, over that nail, and we went out to the temple, took off your tag, hung it up on the board under your name.
Did you work at a mine like that for a while?
I didn't.
Okay,
But
but
Dad
you
did.
did.
I didn't. No. But I have two brass tags yet from that situation. But,
Were they his, your father's?
yeah.
Now, when did the deep mines start petering out and switching over to the strip mines? Was it by the 50s? Was there still anything deep mine going on?
Yeah. Yes. And well, I truck coal up to 55. My dad got out of the coal business, got a job at the railroad. Now I got the truck. Now I truck coal in my spare time. I also worked over here.
At the rail yard?
And I truck coal in the weekends and the evenings. Yeah. And I didn't mind work back in those days. All to make money, more or less, you know. And I got out of that trucking because the river was fading away, and I got a job. I was laid off over here for a couple of months. I got a job at Piper Aircraft in Lock Haven, and I had the choice between never going downhill over here. I thought, am I going to stay in Lock Haven, or am I going to stay over here? So I resigned over here, stayed at Piper. I was getting a dollar $1.25 over here an hour, $1.26 at Piper. No.
So a penny
Working
more.
night shift.
So for that 1 penny, it was worth it.
Well, yeah, because I worked there for 30 years. I was only laid off for 8 days out of 30 years. So I had a pretty good working life.
To the best of your knowledge, what was the last deep mine in the area? What was the last underground mine that hung in? And where was that?
I think if you got up close to 1960, probably the end of it. Everything was going to oil. You know, oil was a big heating thing. And then plus that, the big shipping companies come in, and they could strip what they called, they could take 40 feet of earth and hit the coal. It wasn't profitable going deeper than that. What they had to move it more than 40 feet, it wasn't profitable. So whatever they could get with it in that range, they stripped. A lot of coal left behind. But even in the 50s, there was a heating plant here in town. It served almost a third of the town up through here. Oh, I had steam heat from this heat plant. And the Bachelor's Coal Company in Bitumen had coal mines. And he furnished the coal for that. He had a big operation, deep mine, and then he switched over to stripping.
And that was Bachelet?
Bachelet.
Bachelet.
Yes.
I've seen that one. They had some mines right up Drury Run, kind of between Cook's Run and Drury Run up on that mountain I've seen on maps. But I imagine they had several places they operated.
In Drury's Run, the tipple bottom still stands in Drury's Run. It used to belong to Bachelet. It has a concrete slope still there yet. The one in Bitumen's gone. A big tipple in Bitumen. There was a big operation in 2 mile of right above Westport. Desmond Brothers had it. They had like 10, 12 men working. they had a pony driver, they had a blacksmith, they had my dad eventually, before he went on his own, he had a job with Dedman Brothers, and he became an inspector, a coal inspector. He had to go around all the people in the mines every morning for 3 hours, inspect them. Everything was up to par and that.
Wow.
And then he mined the whole rest of that until he went on his own. But with the variety of things that he did, and that passed over on to me, I guess. And I liked what I was doing because I didn't know any better. I was too young. So. But I know a lot about the happenings from reading newspaper articles and books about Bitumen, and it became real big. Stripping became real big after the 60s, up until about maybe 71, 72. It was a big outfit in Cook's Run. That's right over the hill from Bitumen. They had a monstrous big cleaning plant. They loaded the railroad cars hundreds of times. Pretty strip coal. And that just, they faded away. After so many years, they faded away. They had a lot of contractors with dump trucks haul coal from the strip mines to the temple. They cleaned the coal, conveyed it up into railroad cars. Then after that went away, coal mining in this area went done. None of the around.
If you go up Drury's, where Sandy Run goes up, I've seen a few small tailings and workings up in there. Do you know much about when that might have been worked? Was that real early on, or was?
That was in the late 60s, early 70s.
The strippings up there. What about some of the deep mines? I've seen a few deep mines up in there.
Deep mines was anywhere up to 1955 on back.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know hardly anything about anything that happened in Drury's Run.
Okay.
I just know where I worked, I worked with my dad, still in school. He worked in Bitumen, what they call Duck Hollow. At one time, that mine was electrified. Because they still had evidence of wiring in the mines when my dad was in there working for the English Coal Company. And then he just thought he'd do better by going to a bigger company, which was Dedman Brothers, as I told you, and continued on from there until he got his own mines. He was never satisfied. He wanted to be his own boss, more or less. So that's how it happened.
You had mentioned to me that your working face, would be close enough to the heading or to the coal car that you could shovel it until it got too far. How far was too far? How many feet until you finally had to move it?
You find it more resourceful to do, but throw it this far, and just throw it this far. And you had to lay it on one track. But working with my dad, he always chose a Sunday to do that. Go lay track on a Sunday. That dead work, not even getting paid for it anyways. So you did all your dead work, setting props ahead of time, laying track, and things like that on Sunday. We never put no Sundays off in order to. So, and besides that, the mines always had water running out of it year round. Well, some places it covered the track, closer to the outside, covered the track. That was freezing winter time. Well, first thing you had to do in the morning, after you got to the mines, after you got your truck up the steep grades to the mines, and you had to pick the ice away from the track so you push your coal car in. That didn't work too. So you might be 2 hours doing that kind of stuff before you get a chance to go to work. And we had to go to, which a tannery was operating in North Bend. They had ashes. We go over to the tannery in the morning, 5 tons of ashes put on our truck when it snowed. We had to cinder our own hill to get to the mines,
Traction.
to get to the mines. Then we had chop ice to get into the mines, and it'd be going to work. Everything was hard.
Do you think the rails, the mine cars, do you think in some cases they're still just abandoned inside the mines, or did they pull all that stuff out and salvage the metal?
When my dad left, all the cars were there yet. No, they were off the track. He took the track, sold the track for salvage. And the mine cars still sit there. And to this day, I wish I would have got one, because I got an old clay car. I still have it. Got it down Fernsville. It's the same as a coal car. That's a lot longer than a coal car. Coal cars were short and high. Clay cars were long. And where I got the clay car in Fernsville, the man told me, I can take you, show you where the mines, the mines they blasted shot, has 40 cars of clay sitting inside the mines when they blasted shot. They never took them out.
Loaded and everything?
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
Yep. See, I venture around different places like that, and I learn things from other people, or else I read about it. And plus my own experience.
So you were fortunate that you never had any real bad accidents, but did you know of any? Do you know of any other men that were ever injured or killed, or any bad accidents that happened locally? Okay.
No, not personally, no. No, I only read about that one in Bitumen that killed 17 or 18 men. That was way back before my time, but only because I read about it, that's all. But I did tell you about an article was in the Lycoming Express about a guy who writes pieces about different areas, He wrote a piece about Bitumen, completely false. And then the editor put a caption above it with a going into a deep mine. Never like that around here. Never. That was all false.
You were saying the mine entrances were pretty small compared to
When
this picture.
they were 12 feet wide where you start in, and there was about, it had to be high enough for a man to walk in, and a pony to do in if you had a pony. And then they were like this, short up with almost like railroad ties, that size, up like this across the top. Then you had bark wood up the sides across the top to hold stuff from falling down through till you get back where the coal was solid. But,
Did you call that a collar? A collar where you had the two timbers and a sill across the top? I've heard that.
Yeah.
In anthracite, they call that a collar. I didn't know if in bitumen it's...
I just call it drift mount. That's all I know.
Okay, drift mount.
Drift mount, yes. That was necessary to get back to reach. When you first start back in, the coal is really spongy. It's not. In fact, it's not soluble. It's not good. It's too much dirt mixed with it. Get back in to where it starts getting solid, then you can sell it. But then that's a lot more. Anybody's opening the mines, there's a lot more dead work to get to the point where you can get to sell.
Sure.
Yeah. Only a big operator could do that.
Now you were talking about sizing the coal. In the 40s, was there any demand for the real fine stuff, the
No.
powder? So that was just junk.
What they call nut coal was the biggest demand in this area.
Okay.
Nut coal for stoves. People had stoves, furnaces.
So what'd you do with the fine stuff, the powdery coal?
That went with what you call the mine run. That went mixed with house coal, mixed with a little lumps.
Okay.
But Devon Brothers in Unionization branch had 24-hour operations. They had a real shaker with the same kind of grates with holes in that they dumped their coal on. Shake. They had trucks from Williamsburg that would be there all day long and couldn't get any coal. The man was so great. They'd go home with another trucker at night, come up the next morning with that same trucker, get their truck, load their truck up. But they couldn't get the coal for that production for that day. But they had trucks lined up to get coal, that kind of coal. It was a pea coal, nut coal, and they had bigger lump coal and fine coal. went with the other as mixed mine run. Yes, but that, at that time was demand, a lot of demand.
Was any of the coke industry still going on? I know closer to Emporium, they used to coke some of the coal for the steel industry. Do you know of any of that happening locally?
I do not.
Okay.
No. I just read about those such a things, but I don't know anything about it. No.
Were there multiple seams that you're aware of that were worked in the area? Was there pretty much just one marketable seam that they worked?
The profitable seam was 5.5 feet. It was lesser than that under. But nobody I know of in this area ever did that. It was more than the 5.5 feet. But back in those days, there was demand for truckers for house coal from the whole Clinton County, Lycoming County, to this area. But we only had other mines in Tangaskutak, that's halfway here in Lockhaven, and mines up in there. And there was no other mines till Inley Center, Lycoming County. There wasn't mines around. This was a focal point. But
Are there any other gentlemen left that you're aware of that worked in those mines?
I don't know anybody to talk to. Not left.
You're the first I've met who is, worked in the Bitumen mines that's still living.
Well, you're probably right. Yeah.
Well, what a pleasure it is to know you and get to meet you. But I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. And
Well, I love the articles. But I do like to have somebody can back up the facts. If they don't know what they're talking about, they shouldn't write an article. That's how I look at it. Unless you experience it yourself, don't try to explain it to somebody else, personally.
so if you had a chance to do it all over again, and you were that 15-year-old version of yourself, would you go back to work in the mines tomorrow, if you could?
There was nothing else.
There was nothing else?
You had the coal mines, you had the railroad shops, which was I went to work in June of 50, and it was thriving right then. But within the 5 years' time, it went downhill to where I just knew within a short period of time I wasn't going to be there anymore. So that's how fast it went down, I guess. When diesel come in, took place of locomotives.
Well, I know one thing I didn't bring up, which was union. I imagine none of those mines were unionized up there, were they?
Don't talk about it. No.
Did anyone ever try?
Yes, Bitumen. That's what happened to Bitumen. Bitumen closed down in 1922 because of that. They wanted to unionize, and the company wouldn't go along with it. They finally shut down. All the people living in the company houses had to move out. They either tore the houses down or burned them down. And very few people had a chance to buy the houses. Excuse me. Very few of those houses are still left here. That's how they were. They had their own company store. You heard that story of when you always sold the company store. That's the way it was, because you worked for them. Payday come, you owe them money because you bought everything at the company store. Yeah. I didn't experience that, but I just read about it.
Right, I was going to say, so your father paid you in cash.
Paid me cash. I got paid the same amount a week where I work, 5 days a week where I work 7. Didn't make a difference. I didn't get paid for the ton, I got paid for the days.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Because it was family, probably. Because
Yeah,
it was
right.
family.
Yeah.
And you said it was what, $40 or $50 a week about?
When I quit, got all the mines myself, I got $45 a week. It matter if it was 7 days a week or 5 days a week, it's still $45. That was pretty standard wage around here. You're only getting $10 a day at the railroad. That's $50 a week.
So the miners in general, help me understand what that type of person was like in that era. Were they Were they church-going men? Were they hard drinkers? Were they fighters, baseball players? You know, what were they like as a group? Can you make some generalizations? What were the coal miners like?
All that.
All of that?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. We used to have coal miners that lived at the coal mines, what they call a shanty. They'd get away to town on Saturday and get sloppy drunk. Well, at that time, back in those days, we had taxi service in town. They'd get a taxi to take them back up to the mine. My mother-in-law was a taxi driver, so I know about that. They had a group of guys from each mine lived at the mines.
But some churchgoers and...
There were strong churchgoers, and baseball. They had a Bitumen had a baseball team of his own, and they were fighters. And they had a big recreation hall by Bitumen, dances. That was all big. That was all. Where else could you go? You know, you didn't have transportation back in those days. Not like you got today.
How about chewing tobacco? Did they chew it all to keep the... I've heard some miners will chew to keep the dust out of their mouth.
I never heard that story. Well, I couldn't verify that. It's a different life that the young generation will never experience. And if they're not interested, they'll never know anything about it if they don't read about it. You know? And they're not interested, period. If you don't push a button and something happens, they don't know anything about it, you know.
Well, that's one of the nice things about them videoing our conversation today is this video will be available for people to watch and hopefully learn from you. So it's been very kind of you to share of your own personal life and helping the next generation understand a bit of what your story is.
My boy Dave, I don't know if he has anything he wants to enter into it or not, but he wanted to sit in on it to see what was going on. And he wanted to know more about you.
Uh-oh. Well, I was a coal miner in Schuylkill County, which is similar but totally different too. That's why I've really enjoyed hearing, like I never worked flat pitch. Everything we worked was about a 45-degree pitch. So totally different how you work that coal.
Wouldn't you have a water problem on the slope like that?
Yes. And I laughed at your story of what you call a Hungarian water pump.
Hungarian pump, yes.
I have a friend who was a coal miner near Shamokin, and in the 40s and 50s, they did the same thing. They'd lower their they called it a buggy, their slow buggy down to the deepest point of the mine, and they'd fill it with water, and then they'd hoist it out. And they'd do that until the water was gone, and then they could work a shift.
Yep.
Yeah, I have a question. Bud, Bitumen Mines, can you tell us anything about West Side?
West Side was around going down like Cook's Run. If you follow around, you ever go around that horseshoe? That's West Side, that area. There used to be a village in there. And the West Side and Bitumen people, according to my reading, they didn't get along. Different ethnic groups, and we just like, you stay there, we'll stay here. You know? Yeah.
There was a power plant somewhere in that area. Do you recall that?
A what?
A power plant?
It was an inclined plane, you know that. That one down in there, the Bitumen down in there, Cook's Run.
Well, I suppose if they had an electric mine at one time, there would have had to have been an electrical plant of some kind over there.
I suppose it would be, but I don't really know. I never read anything about that being mentioned, but there had to be some kind of electric. Well, inclined plane was run by mules. You know that. That wasn't electric. And well, one car pulled, one a loaded car going down and blowing the car up, you know. But it was helping my mules. Back in the day.
You mentioned the ethnic groups. What were some of the groups, at least in your era? I mean, what were some of the ethnic groups that you saw still in the mines? Or was it all mixed by then?
Yeah, it was pretty well thinned out from in my time, you know. But there was nobody, hardly any English-speaking people that worked in the coal mines. Hardly any at one time, way back when. There's all imported into here. But there were, well, you didn't have the transportation, you didn't have, they were there, that was it, you know. Whatever entertainment they could make on their own, they did. And they did have a big baseball team. But everything went downhill after 1922. And then you had what you called independent dealers would take an old drift and try to make some money out of it, belong to somebody else, and pay a royalty on it to the owner, and try to make some money out. There was a lot of that going on for a few years, but that faded away too, because it got to be too hard.
Is that kind of what your father did, or did your father buy it outright and he owned it? Like, did he have to pay royalties when
He paid royalty. He bought the mines. He had to pay royalties for buying the mines. He had to pay royalty to a person that owned the mine, that owned the mineral rights.
Wow.
Which also owned the scales in Westport. It weighed every time you mine went over the scales, that's how I kept track of them. How much to charge for 40 cents a ton for him for royalty, for mineral rights, 40 cents a ton for buying the mines for former owner. So then by the time you had all your other things you had to buy to operate a mine, working pretty minimal. It was cut down to the point where it's not worth it. Yeah, and we had old beat up trucks, the whole time we had old beat up trucks. I had a pretty good truck myself in the end, but my dad could never afford a good truck. Always fixing tires. Back in those days, I could take a tire off a truck on a rim, off the ground, and boom, put it right on top of the coal like that. I couldn't even pick up the ring that goes on around the tire today. You know, that's the difference, you know. So it's just.
You mentioned you have some of the brass tags that were your father's. Did you keep anything else? Do you have your old lamp? Do you have?
I have carbide lamp. I have a working carbide lamp. I have like a 5-pound can of carbide. Yeah, I have an auger. I have a needle. I have picks. I have my old aluminum shovel that I when I retired from trucking coal, number 10 aluminum shovel. Yeah, I have that. They were big. You could pick up big load.
Well, it's very kind of you to take the time to talk to me today.
But there's nobody in the area that's living that I can talk to. It has the same experience I might have had, you know. And I asked him different times, and I asked Charlie about different pictures, you know. But sometimes you have them, most times you don't.
Can we show Bud that picture of the coal cars in Drury Run? That's a neat one. Can we show him that one? This just got showed to me today. I'll bring it over to you. Wait till you see this. This one is
It's on this side over here.
This one right here.
Yeah.
It's a little tough to see, but we're pretty sure that's a dinky hauling what looks to be coal cars in Drury's Run. It's labeled Drury's Run.
Very possible, but I don't ever remember anything like that. Never remember seeing a picture like that.
Yeah, I had never seen this one before. It's pretty cool.
I talked earlier about Desmond's Coal Company in Hungarian branch. They went in the mountain here, went clear through the mountain, and come out the mountain over here. They hauled coal outside for a mile to the tip. They were right around, come out different way. That was a lot of years ago.
Well, I'm going to shut off the camera and we can all keep visiting, but I think the formality anyway, we can.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.